What would you do if the man you gave your youth to kicked you out like trash for another woman, and then begged for your forgiveness when she ruined him? Elena stood on the front porch of the house she once called home, a suitcase in each hand, and disbelief tightening in her chest like a vice. The late summer air was thick, but her skin had gone cold. Behind her, the heavy wooden door shut, with a finality that felt like a verdict. His voice echoed in her ears. "She's moving in tonight. I need you gone before she gets here." Just like that. 20 years of marriage swept away by the whim of a man she no longer recognized. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He didn't even look ashamed. His eyes were vacant, the kind of emptiness that only comes when someone has rehearsed this moment in their mind too many times to care how it actually lands. You think betrayal is loud, that it comes with broken glass and shouting matches. But sometimes it's silent, chillingly polite. Sometimes it hands you your own suitcase like it's doing you a favor. Elena didn't beg. That's what haunted him most. She didn't scream or throw things. She just looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. Not rage, not heartbreak. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes a man nervous because it suggests she knows something he doesn't. And she did. But let's rewind a little. 3 months before the eviction, the signs had already begun to surface. Subtle shifts in behavior, missed dinners, business trips with no suitcase packed, the scent of foreign perfume on his shirt sweet and cloying, a scent too young for a 46-year-old man who still called himself a provider. But what does a man like that really provide besides empty promises and deflection? At first, Elena gave him the benefit of the doubt. Not because she was naive. No, Elena was sharp, observant. But sometimes the heart needs time to catch up with what the eyes already see. She watched as his gaze wandered over her shoulder more than her face, as he started treating her kindness like background noise, as he began projecting his own guilt onto her, accusing her of being distant, cold, ungrateful. You see, when a man begins to rot from the inside, he needs to convince himself that it's your fault he no longer feels whole. So he found a mirror, younger, more submissive, eager to be chosen. Her name was Callie, 27 with bright eyes and the sly confidence of a woman who believes she's won something. She hadn't, but she would learn. The night Elena left, she didn't go to a friend's house. She didn't cry in a motel room. She went to a small studio apartment she'd been quietly renting for months, paid for with freelance bookkeeping gigs she kept secret. She'd known long before he had the nerve to say the words out loud that he was preparing to discard her. So she prepared too. Women like Elena, the quiet ones, the steady ones, are underestimated until they're gone. And then comes the unraveling. Callie moved in that night. Pictures were deleted, memories erased. The house was redecorated within days as if removing the traces of Elena would cleanse him of the betrayal, but it didn't. He slept restlessly, ate little, because deep down he knew he hadn't replaced Elena. He'd downgraded. At first, Callie was perfect, sweet, enthusiastic, worshipful. But youth, when unchecked, turns demanding. She wanted more attention, more money, more freedom. And when the shine of the affair dulled, he realized she wasn't a woman. She was a mirror reflecting his midlife crisis back at him. He had destroyed his marriage for a fantasy, and fantasies by nature are not built to last. 1 year later, almost to the day, Elena got the call. It was a number she hadn't saved but recognized instantly. His voice cracked before he could even say her name. "She's gone," he whispered. "She drained the accounts, took everything. I don't even know where." But Elena didn't let him finish. She hung up. Because here's what he didn't know. Elena had known about the account transfers for weeks. She'd watched it unfold. She still had limited access. He'd never changed the passwords. Typical. And she'd smiled every time Callie withdrew another 1,000, knowing the poetic justice was in motion. He wanted her pity. But Elena wasn't the same woman who stood on that porch a year ago. No, she had become something else entirely. And the woman who rises from the ashes of betrayal doesn't carry the same heart she had when she burned. The morning after she hung up on him, Elena sat on her balcony with a cup of black coffee watching the street below. The city moved like it always had, indifferent to broken hearts and desperate voicemails. She liked that, the way everything kept going even when your world fell apart. He called again that night. Left a message this time, the kind that sounds like remorse but is really just regret in disguise. "I made a mistake. I miss us. I see it all now, what I lost, what I did to you. Please, Elena, just talk to me." You see, men like him don't mourn the woman, they mourn the utility, the softness that steadied them, the quiet forgiveness that made them feel noble. He didn't miss Elena. He missed the version of himself that felt like a man in her presence. But Elena, she was no longer holding space for broken egos. In the months after he kicked her out, she rebuilt, slowly, methodically, like a woman stitching herself back together with gold thread piece by fragile piece. At first, she flinched every time someone said her name. She jumped at the sound of footsteps behind her. Her therapist called it invisible bruising. That's what emotional betrayal does. It leaves marks no one else can see. But eventually the bruises faded, and what remained wasn't weakness, it was clarity. She started wearing red lipstick again, not because she wanted to be seen, but because it reminded her she existed. She took long walks alone, letting the wind tangle her hair without apology. She laughed louder, ate slower. She even started dating casually at first. A painter, then a widower who owned a bookstore. Men who didn't need saving or sacrificing or mothering. The difference startled her, how easy it was to be liked without first being broken. Meanwhile, her ex spiraled. Callie had left behind more than an empty closet. She'd siphoned thousands out of his accounts, maxed out a credit card, and forged his signature on a car lease. The police wouldn't help, he had willingly given her access. Civil court would take years, and his pride wouldn't let him tell anyone the truth. So he turned to the one person he'd discarded like yesterday's mail. The wife, the anchor, the woman he assumed would always be waiting with open arms. But Elena didn't wait. You want to know the part that shattered him. She wasn't angry. She didn't curse him out or cry on the phone. She didn't respond at all. Because sometimes silence isn't passive. Sometimes it's power in its purest form. He kept trying, of course. Letters, emails, a long message about how he remembered the way she used to hum while folding laundry, how she smelled like citrus and sandalwood, how he lost himself and forgot who he was. But that wasn't true. He didn't forget. He made a choice. And Elena had made one too. One night she walked past the old house, not because she missed it, but because she needed to see it with new eyes. The windows were dark. Overgrown ivy climbed the porch columns. The yard, once her pride and joy, was dying, like it knew she was gone. She stood there for a long time, letting the past echo through her bones, the dinners, the birthdays, the quiet moments after a long day, all the little things she once clung to. And then she turned and walked away. She never looked back. Here's the thing. No one tells you. When a woman is forced to rebuild from nothing, she doesn't come back as who she was. She evolves, refines, becomes steel wrapped in velvet. And when the man who broke her finally realizes what he lost, she's already become someone he no longer deserves to know. He thought he destroyed her, but he had only set her free. 6 months later, Elena received an envelope. No return address. Just her name written in that familiar handwriting, the one she used to know as intimately as her own breath. She stared at it for a moment before opening it. No trembling fingers, no racing heart, just curiosity dulled by time and distance. Inside a letter, 3 pages, rambling, contradictory, a mess of desperation masked as reflection. He wrote about how Callie had twisted things, how he'd felt trapped in a fantasy he couldn't sustain, how his career had flatlined, how mutual friends had started avoiding him, embarrassed for him, how his mother, the same woman who once told Elena to dress younger to keep his attention, had scolded him for his foolishness. "I see it all now," he wrote. "What you carried, how much you gave without ever asking for anything back. I was blind, Elena. I was broken. But you can't unbreak a glass with words." He ended the letter with a plea, not to return, not even to forgive him, just to meet. 1 coffee, 1 hour. He said he needed closure. Closure. The word tasted bitter in her mouth. Closure is what people ask for when they want you to help them feel better about the pain they caused. She didn't respond. Instead, she poured herself a glass of red wine, pulled out an old journal, and wrote. Not for him, for herself. She wrote about the woman she used to be, the one who twisted herself into shapes just to be seen, who rationalized away disrespect, who thought endurance was love. She wrote about the silence, the nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering why she wasn't enough. Then she wrote about the fire, the moment she chose herself over familiarity, the first day she woke up and didn't feel the weight of his absence, only the lightness of her own becoming. She ended the entry with a question, what if the real closure is knowing he can never touch this version of me? Weeks passed, and then came the twist. Elena received a call from a woman named Danielle, a name she didn't recognize. The voice was trembling. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I think you deserve to know. Danielle was the latest. A woman he'd started seeing after Callie left. At first it was innocent. Coffee dates, long walks, promises that he was finally ready to be honest. But soon the patterns returned. Gaslighting, control, the subtle erosion of confidence masked as concern. He talks about you constantly, Danielle said, like you're this ghost he can't stop chasing. He says you were the one that got away, that he ruined the only thing that ever grounded him. Elena didn't know what to say. Danielle sighed. I left him. I just thought, you should hear it. He's not just broken. He's haunted. That night Elena didn't cry. She didn't rage. She sat on her floor, legs crossed, surrounded by candlelight, and felt something deeper than vindication. Peace. Because when your silence starts echoing louder than your pain, that's when you know you've healed. Not because justice was served, but because you no longer crave it. You see, women like Elena don't stay wounded. They walk through the fire until the ashes no longer cling to their skin. And then they rise. Elena didn't tell anyone about the call. Not her sister, not her therapist, not even the new man she'd begun seeing, a quiet, gentle architect named Theo, who never interrupted her silences and never asked for more than she offered. Because this wasn't about anyone else anymore. This was her story now, no longer orbiting someone else's destruction, no longer defined by the title of ex-wife or betrayed woman. She had outgrown those labels the way trees outgrow the ropes once tied around their trunks. He, meanwhile, was unraveling. Through mutual friends, those who still lingered in the periphery, Elena began to hear whispers. Not gossip, just facts passed along casually without malice. He had lost his job after missing too many deadlines, spent his severance trying to fix his reputation, therapy seminars, even a short-lived podcast on reinventing yourself after heartbreak. The irony was nauseating. He tried dating again, of course, but women weren't lining up the way they once did. Something had changed. Word traveled. People began to see him for what he truly was, a man whose charm didn't hold up under scrutiny, a man who wanted admiration, not connection, a man who couldn't survive without someone else's light to stand in. But Elena. She had stopped lighting rooms for other people to feel warm in. She no longer sought validation in empty apologies or grand gestures. She understood now some apologies aren't meant to heal, they're meant to reopen, to rope you back in, to restart the cycle with new colors but the same design. So she chose stillness, the kind of stillness that feels like power, not paralysis. One day while walking through an art exhibit, she came across a sculpture titled Reclamation. It was jagged and imperfect, a woman's figure carved from shattered glass, pieced back together, but not polished. Raw, real, refusing to be smoothed out for someone else's comfort. She stood in front of it for a long time. It looked like her. Not in face, but in essence. Because healing doesn't make you perfect. It makes you honest. And Elena had never been more honest than she was now. And still the letters came, dripping through her mailbox like slow poison. The last one came on the eve of her birthday. Handwritten, simple. I see you everywhere. Every woman who walks past me with confidence, every smile I know I'll never receive again. I thought I could replace you, but I didn't understand you were never just a wife. You were the reason I felt like a man. Without you, I'm hollow. There was no signature, but it didn't matter. She tore the letter in half, then again until it was confetti in her hands. No rage, no trembling, just release. Because here's what people fail to grasp. Closure doesn't come from understanding why they hurt you. It comes from understanding why you allowed it and why you never will again. And that's when the invitations started. Speaking panels, guest blogs, a women's conference on emotional resilience. People who had quietly watched her transformation now wanted her to speak it into the world, not as a victim, but as a voice. She said yes, because stories, when told without shame, become lifelines for those still drowning in silence. On the night before her first speaking engagement, she stood in front of the mirror. She wore a navy silk dress, elegant and unfussy. Her hair fell in soft waves. Her eyes were clear, unapologetic. She looked at herself the way she used to look at others searching for cracks. But this time she found none that scared her. Only lines of survival. Proof that she had lived broken, rebuilt. And as she stepped onto that stage the next day, she didn't think about him, not once. She thought about the women in the audience, the ones who hadn't left yet, the ones still carrying the weight of someone else's comfort, the ones waiting for permission to choose themselves. And in that moment, her voice steady, her spine straight, Elena became that permission. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't beg, she watches. Then she rises.